Hell Husbands, Chapter 3, Don't Make Me. Trigger warnings for racism and attempted murder. Vincent watched from his office window as Alastor went out for his break. He often liked to take a small stroll after being stuck in a recording booth for a while. Usually, nothing went too wrong, but today, Vincent watched with apprehension as Al was approached by someone in an officer's uniform. By the distance, he could barely tell who the man was, but he could tell that the officer was no good as he poked his finger into Al's chest and was yelling about him being too dirty to roam the same side of the street as him, a white man. He could hear it through his closed window and everything. Vincent's jaw was tense and his teeth were gritted in anger as he watched Al put on a very placating smile and probably apologized to the man for the sin of being a person of color. He turned away from the window. He was going to get that man's name. He would pay for how he treated his Al. Vincent caught Al's eye as he passed in the hall to take his break so that he could figure out just exactly who the one that had dared to disrespect Al was. Al simply nodded at him in acknowledgement. He strolled down the way and it didn't take long to find the man. He smiled fakely and called out, "Oh, hey, I don't think I've seen you around before. Are you new?" The man, who had dark brown hair and blue eyes, as well as a rather unruly-looking mustache, acknowledged him. Hello. Yes, today is my second day on the job." Vincent nodded and said, "How well do you know things around here?" The officer shrugged and said, "Not very. Moved here with the missus and the kids just last week and had to find a job quick and was hired almost immediately." Vincent nodded and said, I know how that feels. Takes a while to get used to the place. Say, have you tried the cafe over there yet? It's the best in town." The man shook his head and said, "Not yet." Vincent smiled widely as he said, "Why don't you now? I'm heading there to grab something and can tell you the best things to grab." The man followed him into the cafe and proceeded to listen to him as he described the best things to order. The man appeared uncomfortable when he noticed that the waitstaff was primarily people of color. Yep, a major racist indeed. He didn't even touch the coffee that was provided to him. "You know, the station that has had an uptick in criminal activity near it. Would you mind sticking closer to it near dark so that no vagrants get any ideas?" Vincent proposed. He then heard the man grumble under his breath about how it was probably one of the colored folks who worked there causing trouble. The man then said, "Yeah, no problem. I know what to do if I catch anyone making trouble around there." Vincent grinned. The trap was set. He was in the middle of wiping his knife off on his shirt when he heard his lovely Alastor slink into the alleyway entrance. It had been far too easy of a kill. Alastor simply said, "What made you go after this one without me, dear?" Vincent simply looked back at him and replied, "I wanted this one all to myself, love. He disrespected you, and I took that personally." Alastor simply smiled as he approached. He looked down at the body and said, "Well, dear, at least let me help with the cleanup." And so he did. Vincent was worried. Alastor hadn't shown up at their rendezvous point. They had been planning on going on a hunting date again. Al had never been late to one of those before. Ever. So he knew something was absolutely wrong. Al had left the station at a normal time and took the tram like usual. He knew where Al lived, so he quickly made the decision to head out there. He'd have to be careful not to be seen, but considering how deep Alastor lived in the bayou, it wouldn't be too hard to avoid being seen. He was quite shocked to see that Al's front door was wide open and there was a dim glow coming from inside. He knew something was absolutely wrong now. He carefully approached and used his specific knock on the edge of the open door as he observed what he could see. He and Al had developed the knocking identification as a precautionary safeguard of identifying each other. He received no response and was disturbed as he saw shattered glass on the floor. He ventured inside and was distressed when he found blood spots, fairly fresh from within the past 2 hours. The cabin was more disheveled the further he ventured in. The kitchen, though, it was the worst, and the back porch door had been partially ripped off of its hinges. There were quite a few shattered plates and bowls, and it appeared as if someone had ransacked the place. But worst of all, Al's favorite knife was lying on the floor close to the back porch's door. and the floor had distinct scuff marks that belonged to shoes that he knew could not have been Alastor's. And there was blood on the door frame, as if Alastor's head had been grabbed and thrown into it multiple times to disorient or knock him out. Someone had dared to attack and take Al from his own home. Vincent gritted his teeth as he was consumed by rage. No one touched what was his and lived to tell the tale. And he was going to find them. If there was any chance that Al had been partially conscious, he would have left clues. He picked up his love's knife, ready to go after him. And thanks to Al's mentorship, the bayou was practically a second home to him. Vincent panted as he stabbed the last of his love's attackers through the heart before taking it out and plunging it into the man's left lung. Watched as he gurgled on his blood before the light finally left his eyes. 3 men had taken Alastor from his home and dragged him further out into the bayou with rather nefarious plans. They'd already beaten him, and become far too handsy with him, and had been preparing to hang him when he'd finally managed to find the 3 sharing a laugh at what they'd done as they prepared rope. But Vincent had arrived in time, and acted immediately as his vision was filled with red and white-hot rage had him acting faster than he could even think. And now, all 3 of them were dead. One of them had even been wearing their damn police uniform. He hated how corrupt the police force and so many of the higher-up officials were. He still panted as he looked back over where Al had been propped up against the tree by his attackers. His hands and feet were still tied together. His clothes were riddled with tears and cuts, as the men had also apparently taken a knife to his skin at some point. His eyes were glassy, and he had the clear signs of a nasty concussion. Vincent slid the knife back into its hiding place in his jacket and made his way over to Al. Al didn't make a move or a sound as he knelt beside him. He cautiously called out, "Al?" but received no response. He carefully laid a hand on Al's shoulder, but withdrew when Al flinched. He could feel tears building in his eyes. Alastor hadn't flinched around him in so very long. He would kill those assholes again if he could. He softened his tone as he said, "Al? Hun? It's Vincent. I'm here. You're safe now." Vincent watched his Alastor brow furrowed, and his pupils changed slightly as he confusedly called with a slight slur to his voice, "Vinny?" Vincent bit his lip as he said, Yeah, I'm here, Al." Vincent was slightly unprepared and startled when Al began to cry and immediately fell forward. Vincent was quick to catch his love and hold him as he cried into his shoulder. He cradled Alastor to himself and carefully maneuvered him in a way to make it easier for himself to stand. He petted Al's hair as he said, "I'm taking you to my place tonight. You're safe. You'll stay safe with me, my love." It took a rather decent amount of time to get back to his apartment, especially since he had to do so in a way that made them unseen. There had been a couple of close calls, but they made it in the end. Alastor had passed out in his arms by the time he'd made it back to his apartment. He carefully proceeded to treat what wounds he could tell that his Al had, as he knew of no clinics that would properly treat him, especially since his poor dear was mistreated on both sides. He wasn't white enough for the white clinics, and he wasn't black enough for the others. Truly heartbreaking and quite maddening. But luckily, he had some experience in dealing with concussions, so he did his best and cleaned the wound on the back of Al's head. Once everything was treated to the best of his abilities, he was exhausted and still in the bloody clothes of his most recent spree of shedding blood. He kissed Al on the forehead very softly as he held him in his arms as the man slept, and vowed that anyone who ever dared to try and lay a hand on him or disrespect him would meet a gruesome fate in the end. No one hurt his Alastor and got away with it. No one.